L7.4 video 4. Now let's take a look at the last two that we saved. Now these two are similar because when you look at the trinomial, they all have something in common right away. So we want to make our factoring as simple as possible. So I want to make my numbers as small as possible. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to notice that all of them can be factored by a 2. So if I take a 2 out, I will have 2, and then I have 3x squared plus 11x minus 4. And now what I'm going to do is I want to have an answer down here with a 2 on the outside, but this is going to be factored like we have been doing. So I take the first term now, which is 3, and the last term, which is negative 4. Now notice we have a negative product. So we're looking for two numbers that have a product of negative 12 and a sum of 11. So we take a look at these examples, and we have, now I'm not going to worry about the signs, but notice that we have a negative product, so one of them has to be negative of the two numbers. So I'm just going to write down our products here first. So 12 times 1, 6 times 2, 4 times 3. Now one of them has to be negative. So if I make one of them negative, which pair has a sum of 11? Well, the only ones that have a difference of 11 are 12 and 1. To get a difference of 11, the 12 must be positive and the 1 must be negative. So what we've created is, and I'm going to come back to this later, okay, remember that. So I'm going to focus on this part. I have 3x squared. Now I'm going to write plus 12x minus 1x minus 4. So these two terms replace the 11. We've created now 4 terms, so I can here factor out a 3x because they have that in common, and I get x plus 4. The next one, I'm going to factor out a negative 1, as we mentioned. When that's negative, take it out with it, and we get x plus 4. If we don't take that negative with, you'll have different things in the parentheses. So we look at this whole piece, and we factor it out, and we get a x plus 4 in common, as we said, and what's left goes in the second one, which is 3x minus 1. And this is factored. Now remember, the 2 is important to not forget. In our next one, we have a trinomial that has terms all divisible by 5. So let's take out that 5. When we factor out a 5, we get 2y squared minus 7y plus 6. Now again, that 5 is going to come down here, and we're going to have it in the end on the outside, and we can't forget about it. So let's start where we did before. We take the front term 2 and the back term 6. We multiply them together and we get 12. So we're looking for two numbers that have a product of 12 and a sum of negative 7. So we look at our choices. We've got 12 times 1. We've got 6 times 2. We've got 4 times 3. Now again, they have to multiply together to give us 12. Let me fix that. And they have to add up in this case to negative 7. Adding up because you have a positive result when you multiply, so they have to both be positive or both be negative. So you're talking about a sum in that case when they have the same sign. So we have 4 and 3 that add up to 7, but they have to add up to negative 7. So we'll make both of them negative. Now we have the ability to change this to 2y squared minus 4y minus 3y plus 6. So we've replaced that middle term with two new terms, compatible terms. So now we can focus on the first two terms because we have 4 terms. We can factor by grouping, and we get a 2 and a y in common, which gives us y minus 2. And our next one has a 3 in common, but since the first one is negative, we say we're going to factor out that negative with it, and then we get y minus 2. If we didn't take that negative with it, again, remember, it would be a problem. The parentheses would not be the same. So they both those terms have a y minus 2 in parentheses. And what's left when you take that out is the terms there in front of each parenthesis. So we have 2y minus 3. And this is factored. Again, don't forget about that front term. And we factor the 5 out again to remember to make our factoring easier. If we didn't do it early, we could still factor, but we'd have to finish simplifying it later in the problem. But this way it's done right away. And this ends 7.4 video 4.